Badger fans need a reason to get excited about next year's football team. I'm going to give you 8 reasons to be optimistic about next year's football team.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, Badger fans? Welcome to Locked On Badgers, your team every single day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Ryan Arias. Really do appreciate you being here. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Super Bowl 59 is here. There's no better way to get in the game than play with the exciting FanDuel Sportsbook. New customers give it $5, and if you win, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Download the app, head to FanDuel.com to get started. Today's episode, we are talking reasons for football optimism. Who's a better player, John Tonje or Johnny Davis? And where do they rank among the best 6 players in recent Badgers history? Plus, this basketball stretch coming up and the stats that define this basketball team. All that and more in a loaded Locked On Badgers. Let's start here. Let's start football because there's been, and I'm going to be doing a show coming up about reasons why you shouldn't be optimistic about the Badgers football team. But I want to start here. I think there's some real reasons for optimism. And I don't think you need to get a magnifying glass out and search for them. I think there are real reasons for optimism. I'm going to list them out for you. You can tell me I'm right or wrong. But these are reasons I'm optimistic heading into next year's Badgers football team. First one is Billy Edwards. It's quarterback play. It's Danny O'Neal. It's having competent quarterback play. I've been looking through several early preemptive, like it's early, we get it. But I've been looking through several early preemptive Big Ten quarterback power rankings. And Billy Edwards, in all of them, is middle of the pack. And listen, if you're Ohio State, you're like, well, that's not great. If you're Bama, you're like, well, that's not great. But listen, if you're Wisconsin after last year, you're like, oh, okay. All right, let's do it. I mean, you're going from the bottom of the barrel, the bottom tier statistically. And it's not a knock on anybody. It is what it is. The Badgers had, when you factor in offensive coordinator, passing game coordinator, quarterback play, they had the worst or the second worst passing game statistically in the Big Ten last year. If you can get to middle of the pack, and now you also have an experienced backup that I think is a little better than Braden Locke. I think he gives you a little more mobility. So even if you have an injury, I think from a starting standpoint and a backup quarterback standpoint, you're in a better spot next year. And that is everything in football. It just, you can't overestimate the importance of a quarterback and having competent quarterback play and what it does for every facet of your team, what it does for your time of possession, what it does for your receivers, what it does for your running game. It opens everything up. It is the main cog in the ignition. I guess I'm not an engine guy. I don't know what the main cog is. But it just raises every part of your team. If you can go from bad to competent quarterback, you're going to win a couple more games. If everything else is the same and you just improve your quarterback play by several tiers, which are at least one big tier, going from bad to mediocre, from bad to average, it's a huge reason to be optimistic. And I think Billy Edwards does that. I'm pretty big on him. I talked about it before they got him. I was in a Discord. I was saying, listen, I kind of like this guy. I think there's something here. He was on a bad Maryland team, but he can move. He's got size. He's a veteran. He's played in the Big Ten. I think there's something here. I don't think he's a star. I don't think he's a superstar. I don't think this gets you into the playoffs, but I think it makes you better. I think it makes you competitive. I think it allows you to move the ball a little bit better. I think it allows you to hold on to the ball a little bit better. It gives you mobility at the quarterback spot. It gives you toughness. We've seen that on his film. I think you have to be kind of excited about it. I really do. Number 2. Continuing on with offense, the shift from Longo to Grimes. The more and more I've talked to people, the more and more we've sat back and reflected. It was just a really bad fit with Longo here. That's on Fickle. That's 100% on. It was a bad hire. It was a bad identification. It was a bad idea. It was a swing and a miss. You know, he took a cut up at the plate and he swung right through a fastball. And you're not going to get too many more strikes, right? You don't get too many big cuts at offensive coordinators if you're a head coach coming into a program. But that one missed. But Grimes feels like a much more natural fit. He feels much more in tune with what Wisconsin has to do. He wants to run the ball. There's going to be more motion. And the quarterback that we just talked about is going to fit in with his scheme better. I think that's another big reason. I think you've upgraded at quarterback and you've upgraded at OC. And then the two of them also augment each other. Like they amplify each other a little bit. So not only did you individually upgrade on both, but if you just done one or the other, and kept the other the same, I think you still have an issue. The fact that you change both, and I think both are better, and they work together, they augment each other, I think you're in a much better spot just cohesively on the offensive side. That's reason number 2. Number 3, we talked about this with Brady Collins when he came on. There's just a lot more beef on the defensive line in the front 7, right? We went through all the names, even a guy like Michael Garner up to 305, 6'7". A couple of these other guys, Barton putting on 20 pounds, Dylan's going to be back and stronger. You bring in a Riger, you bring in a Suggs, you bring in a Big Perk. They may not be stars individually, but they're just bigger and stronger and stouter. I think that matters. Trent Baalke, I think it was Baalke, who's been an NFL GM in a couple spots, Jaguars, Niners, somewhere else. He said something once in a draft, and it's so absurdly obvious, but it checks. He said, it's football. Big people win. In the trenches, a lot of times big people do, and especially at the college level. You go back to those great Wisconsin teams. What was the talking point all the time? Look how big their offensive line is. Big people win in football. It's not the only thing. You need speed, athleticism, coaching, all these things. But in general, a lot of times bigger people win in football. And getting some more bulk on the defense line, getting bigger there, getting stouter, getting tougher. It feels like that was a priority this offseason. Now, we have to see how it works out. The priority last offseason was the linebackers. But I do think it was more targeted this offseason. I feel like they have gotten better on the defensive line, and that's going to bear fruit in a lot of ways. Next up, reason number 4. Again, reasons to be optimistic. I'm going to be doing a show coming up. I know everyone's already going to be yelling at me, Ryan, being positive again. I'm doing a show coming up on this week on reasons to be pessimistic. So just chill out. But these are legitimate reasons and why I think this is going to be better. Number 4, it's the maturation of key pieces. We talked about recruiting for the last couple of years, about what we think this class could be, or that class could be, this player could be, that player could be. I think in general, this staff has done a very good job of recruiting. And now next year, you're going to see Kevin Heywood take over the left tackle spot. I think he's a star. He's here for 3 years. He's one of those guys that's here for 3 years. Freshman year, learn the ropes, start as a sophomore, star as a junior, off to the NFL, sayonara, kid. That's the trajectory for Kevin Heywood. I think he's going to be a stud next year. The 2 running backs, you saw them both last year. You saw Darian Dupree and Dylan Jones. Now they're both going to be true sophomores with another full year under the belt. There's no reason to think that both of them aren't going to take a jump. A guy like Tretch, who's going to come back and get a bulk of the workload now that Will Pauling's gone. That's a player that the film was still there. We're excited about the athletic ability after the catch. Like a Grant Steck, big-time 4-star tight end, is now going to have that full year in the system. A guy like Dylan Johnson on the defensive line. Again, played a lot as a true freshman on the interior defense line. You tell me he's not going to be better next year. Tommy Heiberger, Emilio Agard, Jay Harper, a lot of these young pieces we talked about, we're going to see them start to filter in, and they bring an uptick in athleticism. I think that's another reason to be excited about what's going on. Number 5, the tight end spot might be fixed after several years of wandering the wastelands of post-Jake Ferguson tight end apocalypse, right? Searching, please, sir, may I have a tight end, sir? May I have a tight end with more than 15 receptions, sir? No? Okay. Yeah, you're bringing in Tanner Koziel. 94 receptions last year. It feels like the tight end spot's fixed. Check. I mean, that's an easy slot in. Yep, that spot's fixed. Done. Now, is he going to do that in Big Ten? Absolutely not. Is he going to give you what you haven't had last couple of years? Absolutely yes. That's about as sure a transfer as you can get with production at a high level. The film backs it up. He's probably a mid to low level NFL draft pick type tight end at the spot. And that's a thing that we haven't had in a long time. Number 6, this is a possibility, but we've talked about on the show. If Nizer comes back, then you have Nizer Fortgreen and Ricardo Hallman backed up by a couple transfer portal guys, backed up by Emilio Agard and Jay Harper. Suddenly your cornerback spot seems fine. Right. And that's dependent on Fortgreen coming back, but he's currently suing the NCAA for another year of eligibility. If he comes back, and then you have Zachman and Austin Brown at the safety spot with a couple of transfers there, what you've been so concerned about in the secondary with depth starts to feel kind of okay, right? And honestly, with a 1-2 punch of Rico and Nizier, that's actually a better than average cornerback duo for Wisconsin in the starting twos, or that starting duo. So. Okay, let's start to cook with this. Number 7, schedule's hard for sure, but it was hard last year and they won 5 games. It's just one of those things where, yes, the schedule's really tough. It was really tough last year with terrible quarterback play and an offensive coordinator that didn't make sense. It's that same type of schedule this year, but I think you have better quarterback play, more cohesiveness on the coaching staff, a bigger defensive line, and some of those younger pieces maturing. So it's kind of like last year, but I think we're better. And I think, Iowa loses a ton. Minnesota loses a lot. Some of those teams aren't going to be as good this year as they were last year. Now, Bama's still going to be a bear, right? So there's teams on the schedule that you look at and you're just like, yeah, okay, that team's still a bear. But other teams are going to take a step back, where I think the Badgers are maybe taking a step up in some spots. Last reason I think you need to be optimistic is I think Luke Fickell the guy who brought Cincinnati to the playoffs is still there. He's taken some lumps. He's had to learn, but I still don't think you luck your way into the playoffs as a coach. I think that juice is still there. I know he's competitive. I've talked to enough people kind of around it that feel like, yeah, he's learned some things, and I think this is heading in the right direction. So there you have it. 8 reasons to be optimistic for football next year. I just talked myself into being more optimistic, just going over that list. Let's take a quick second here. We're going to come back. Having a conversation with somebody lately. Who's a better basketball player? Is it Johnny Davis or John Tonje at this time in their careers? Let's go up. Let's talk about that next on Locked On Badgers. I'm going to tell you why I think it's Johnny Davis. Okay, quick break for our friends of the show over at FanDuel. FanDuel is phenomenal. Right now, Super Bowl 59 is here. 1 game, 2 teams, endless possibilities. And there's no better way to make a play, to play even more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook, whether it's predicting the first touchdown, calling the MVP, or even betting on the coin toss, which you can absolutely do. FanDuel makes it easy to get in on the action with live betting all game long. You can adjust your bets as the game unfolds and feel the thrill from kickoff to the final whistle. Live betting feature allows you to stay involved no matter what's happening in the game, so you can continue staying involved in that action as it's happening. And the app is awesome. It makes it super easy to navigate. Plus, knowing that you can place a $5 bet and potentially win $200 in bonus bets for the Super Bowl, that's icing on the cake. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Just bet $5. If you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel, the official partner of Super Bowl 59. Okay, let's keep going here. This is a really interesting conversation that I was having with somebody. They were asking me, hey, Ryan. I'm like, yeah. They're like, Ryan, better player, John Tonje, as this year, John Tonje, or Johnny Davis his last year at Wisconsin? And I answered quickly. I think it's Johnny Davis, right? I think it's totally Johnny Davis. And he said, no, I think it's Tonje. I think Tonje is a better player than Johnny Davis. I'm curious what everybody that's going to listen to this thing. So let me know what you think in the comments. But it got me thinking, what a success story for Greg Gard that we're even having this conversation with John Tonje. By the way, behind me, today's show unofficially brought to you by Kirk Penny, Badger Great. If you're watching on YouTube, you see his photo up there. The fact that we're even having this conversation is a great thing for the Badgers. It's obviously a great thing for Greg Gard, who identified and found Tonje. Here's why I think Davis is better. Then we're going to get into ranking some of the best recent players in Wisconsin basketball and where Tonje fits on that list, where Blackwell fits, et cetera, et cetera. I think this is going to be a fun little mini list. The thing with Davis that I think people forget, and why I think he's a better player as a sophomore at Wisconsin than Tonje is this year, Davis had to do more. Davis was a better rebounder, a better defender. He had more of a load put on his shoulders. The team around him wasn't as good. The offense was more claustrophobic. If you remember, we were still playing that different style of offense. Defenses were loading up on him. He still averaged 20 points per game. He was guarding guys like Jaden Ivey. I mean, people forget Johnny Davis led the Big Ten in defensive rebounding as a guard. He averaged over eight rebounds a game, scored 20 points, 8 rebounds a game. He was incredible. Johnny Davis was absolutely incredible and kind of a one-man show, whereas Tonje, who has been an absolute stud this year, make no mistake, this is not a knock on Tonje. I mean, Johnny Davis was a first-team All-American. Tonje just has more help around him. The team is deeper. There's more shooters. There's way more spacing. I think if you took Johnny Davis and put him on this year's team with the spacing he would have and the shooting he would have around him, I think he'd be even better. I think his efficiency numbers would jump off the chart. Whereas I think if you were to put John Tonje on that Johnny Davis team, I just kind of tend to think he might have got swallowed up a little bit because the defenses were just swarming Johnny Davis. He had a usage rate over 30%. He just had to do so much for that team. Where I just think John Tonje, he's just in a spot where he gets a little more help. And this, again, it's no knock on one or the other. And then I want to take this a step further and go back to like kind of that first couple years of the Greg Gard era, right? Where he's taken over after Bo Ryan left. Who are the best 6-ish players that the Badgers have had since that point, right? Here's my list. I think number 1 is Johnny Davis. I know people will disagree with that maybe. I think it goes Davis, Ethan Happ, John Tonje, Nigel Hayes, John Blackwell, and then Bronson Koenig. If you go back into those like 2015, 2016 teams, I think those are in order. Those are the 6 best players I think the Badgers have had. So it's Johnny Davis. To me, he leads the way because he had to do so much. He was the only guy that, was scoring on those teams for the most part. He was playing defense. He was rebounding. He was a first-team All-American. I just think he had such a load on him, and he was a lottery pick for a reason. He was a lottery pick because he was so good that sophomore year. Number 2, I have Ethan Happ. kind of in the list of the best Badgers the last several years, I have Ethan Happ right after Johnny Davis. Now, Ethan Happ was an awesome center. Incredible defensively, crazy good passer, averaged 4.5 assists per game, great rebounder, great hands, incredible footwork, but he just couldn't shoot. He just couldn't shoot, man. He couldn't shoot free throws. He couldn't shoot jumpers. And it just constricted the offense so painfully at times. It made it too easy for teams to foul him at the end of the games. He would listen, he would have been a lottery pick after 2 years if he could have shot the ball. That's how good he was. That's how talented he was at everything else, but he just couldn't shoot. That's why I can't put him above Johnny Davis. He was a second-team All-American, great player. I think you got to put Davis first. And then third, I'm going Tonje. I'm going this year's version of Tonje, just because his shooting is incredible. Free throw shooting is incredible. Getting to the line is an absolute skill. I have Tonje third because he is making tough shots. He's unlocking the offense. He's tough. He's versatile. He's a okay-ish on-ball defender. Could be better off ball, but I think offensively he's such a weapon. I have him third on this list. I have Nigel Hayes fourth. Nigel's one of the smartest, most intelligent basketball players I've ever seen. Again, a guy who struggled with his shooting, but really good defender, good rebounder, brilliant player, great passer as a big man. He would carve up zones. I have Nigel Hayes fourth. Right after him, John Blackwell. I go back and forth with Blackwell and Tonje. I think Blackwell struggled a little bit the last several games. There's another gear in there, but I think he struggles a little bit playing out of position. I think he's a two guard that's being asked to play a little bit too much point, to initiate the offense a little too much in this year's version of the Badgers. I think it's hurting him a little bit, and he has to get more consistent. And then last on this list, I have Bronson Koenig. So I'm sure people will tell me I'm too low on Bronson. Bronson was a great shooter. He had some huge shots. He's also a career 9.9 point scorer, career 2 assists per game guy. Statistically, I never think Bronson Koenig's statistical profile kind of fits the narrative of who Badger fans think of him as a player. Very good point guard, great shooter, big time shot maker, but a little undersized, never a prolific scorer, not a prolific passer, not a great defender. So I have him behind the Blackwells and the Nigel Hayes. But let me know what you think. Well, how would you arrange that order, Badger fans? Johnny Davis, Ethan Happ, John Tonje, Nigel Hayes, John Blackwell, and Bronson Koenig. Super interested to see how you guys would arrange that. I could be way off. Again, that list isn't the right list. That's just my list and my rankings. All right, we're going to take a quick second here. We're going to talk about this big-time stretch of Badger basketball coming up and 3 stats that define this Badgers basketball team, including a bad one that they're going to have to get better at. That's next, Locked On Badgers. First, a quick break for our friends of the show. And a quick second to say thank you for tuning in as always. All right, we have a massive stretch of basketball coming up, Badger fans. Now, we talked about it. That's why that Northwestern win was so big. That's why they had to get that win, because now you're through the buffet, right? You ate your salad, you had your croutons, whatever you get on. Now it's like the meat and potatoes. Now you got to buckle down and you got to do some work now. So home game coming up against Indiana, big time game. Roadie against Iowa, road game against Purdue, home game Illinois, home game Oregon. That's a 5-game stretch. It's a murderer's row. What did the Badgers need to do in that stretch? Well, I think you're going to lose to Purdue on the road. I think you probably lose to Iowa on the road. Although the last time the Badgers played Iowa, they kind of took their soul. Iowa had no defensive answer for Wisconsin the last time they played this year. They absolutely murdered them, if you remember that game. But on the road, it's always different. I think if you go 3-2 in that stretch, you're super happy, right? That would be just winning your home games, which include Illinois, who Illinois hasn't been as good lately as they started the year, but Illinois already beat you this year. You're going to have a home game against Oregon that's going to provide you some athletic issues. Indiana's not going to be a pushover. If you go 3-2 in this upcoming stretch, I think you're feeling really happy. 2-3, you're fine with. Like 2-3 is not ideal. If you go 1-4, and gosh forbid you go 0-5, then you're start to get in trouble. I don't think you're not going to go 0-5. I think you got to find a way to go 2-3 at the worst, and hopefully 3-2, which means you're winning your home games. So we're obviously going to be at that Oregon game, but a massive stretch of Badger basketball coming up. I wanted to hit on 3 stats that kind of define this year's team that I find super interesting. The first one is Carter Gilmore, 40% three-point shooter. It's absolutely, you just don't see this much. You just do not see team players who don't play a lot who go from almost complete non-shooters to 40%. Oh crap, I got to close out on him. Now he's in the scouting report. That's the best compliment you can give any basketball player, or any player probably in general. Like, hey, you're in the scout now. You're in the scouting report. Now opposing coaches are going to talk to their defenses or talk to their defending players. They're going to talk about rotations. They're going to talk about, you're going to have to close out on Gilmore. You're going to have to close out on that guy. He's shooting 40% from three. It's just an unbelievable progression for him. And credit to Gard, credit to Penny, credit to Gilmore. Absolutely awesome for him. And the progression that he's made throughout his career, 40% three-point shooter. Absolutely insane. Next stat here. I love this one. The top 9 guys in the Badgers right now in minutes played. So the top 9 guys, basically everybody in the regular rotation, so that's Amos on up. Everybody in the regular rotation is shooting 79% or better from the free throw line except Jack Janicki. 8 of the 9 guys are shooting 79% or better from the free throw line. That's insanity. We talk about this all the time. The team free throw shooting percentage chasing the best mark in NCAA history. But when you actually go and look at the numbers, 88%, 82%, 84%, it's absolutely insane. And that's, again, a credit to this coaching staff for emphasizing that, a credit to the players for emphasizing that, a credit to the coaching staff for finding the type of players that can shoot that way, right? That's a recruiting win, a developmental win. That's a player individual developmental win. That's insane. You have a team of guys shooting 80%. Nolan Winter shooting 79%. He's like at the lowest tier of that regular group. Absolutely insane. And even Jack Janicki, it surprises me that he's shooting as low as he does because he has a pretty good shot too. There's just no bad shooters. That's the thing. You go and look through this regular rotation, there's just no bad shooters anywhere. It's insane. No team, the Badgers haven't had this in forever. They've always had 2 or 3 bad shooters. There's just no bad shooters. And we talked about this 2 years ago, Badger fans. We talked about it 2 years ago. 1 year ago, we started to talk about all Greg Gard is doing is recruiting shooting. Everybody he's bringing in can shoot the ball. It's a point of emphasis. And even the guys that washed out, the guy like Gus Yalden could shoot as a big. Even the guys that have washed out and haven't really worked out, they could still shoot the ball. That's been the carrying trait for everybody he's recruited in the portal. Everybody he's got out of high school, everybody can shoot. Now, Will Garlock coming up in next year's class, maybe not, but Kinzinger can absolutely shoot it too. Hayden Jones can shoot it. Like, this is what he's looking for. He's looking for shooting. He's looking for versatility. It's a more of a modern fit, and now they're recruiting to that modern fit, and you're seeing it translate onto the court. This has been a multi-year process of we're going to bring shooters into Wisconsin and see if we can spread the floor more. You're seeing the fruition of that. This doesn't happen by accident, is my point. This has been a recruiting win and a recruiting focus to find shooters, and now you're shooting 85% from the line as a team. That's because of the way they've recruited and targeted shooting. It's really a big win for the Badgers. The next one is kind of a bad stat, but this is something that I think is a weakness on this team. Assist to turnover ratio as a team is 110 to 72. So you're at like 1.3 to 1 assist to turnover ratio. That's bad. That's not very good. And you look at the two main the two primary offensive initiators. You know, John Blackwell is about a 1-to-1 assist to turnover ratio. Tonje is about a 1.8 to 2. So neither of them are positive. Blackwell breaks even, and Tonje is a little worse than that. This is where not having a point guard, like a really true point guard, hurts the team. This is where when teams can push you out, can apply some perimeter defensive pressure, this team is going to struggle because the two primary offensive initiators aren't necessarily natural playmakers, right? The 3 best playmakers on the team, it's Krell, it's Klesmit, it's McGee, and none of those guys are 3-to-1 type assist to turnover ratio guys. You know, Krell is like 2.5 to 1.5, so he's +1. McGee's 2.6, so he's like +1.5. Klesmit is having the best year of his career as a passer, and that's why I wanted to end the show. That's why, even though he's not shooting great, he's giving you another playmaker. He's giving you a secondary playmaker on the team, which is really important for this year's squad. That's a big part of his value. It's defensive versatility, it's toughness. It's the fact that teams still close out on him, but it's also he's giving you another guy that's setting up open looks for others. And on a team that is now lacking a Chucky Hepburn, that still isn't playing Kamari McGee quite as many minutes as I think they should, Klesmit's kind of your secondary playmaker. Get the ball reversal from Tonje or Blackwell, and then start to make a play or two. He's increased his assist rates quite a bit this year. So I know hasn't shot it as well as we'd like, but when you start to look at the value Klesmit brings to the court, do not forget that he is giving you assists. He's giving you more passing. He's giving you more playmaking than he has in any other year of his career. So that's where a lot of his value on the court still is. I want to say thank you to everybody tuning in. When you're done, go check out Locked On Big Ten, all the biggest stories from the Big Ten Network, or the Big Ten Conference, realignment, all that stuff over on the Locked On Big Ten channel. Really do appreciate everybody tuning in on Wisconsin, and we will talk later.